Jacob, our hero for the next 5 minutes. Jacob, a young man of about 19 years old, perhaps, as we reckon maturity in our culture. Jacob sets out on his own to find himself and create a life. And on the very first night of his journey, he has a dream. He dreams there is a ladder between earth and heaven, and messengers of God are going up and down the ladder. And Jacob himself dreams that he receives a message from God. And Jacob wakes from his sleep, and he knows he has had a powerful mystical experience. He has had a numinous experience. God has burst forth for him at that time and at that place. But young Jacob has no theology, no concepts, no theory for understanding his experience. And he thinks it's all about the place. And he erects a monument to that place in which God is here and I did not know it. At this point in his life, Jacob does not understand that the dream is not about a particular place, but the dream is about him and his life. He does not yet understand that he is the ladder. He himself is the channel. And that after many years of living a life filled with great joys and also filled with great suffering, he himself is going to become such a powerful channel of divine spirit that the Pharaoh himself will ask for Jacob's blessing. But Jacob does not know this yet. He had a dream, God appeared to him in a place, and he accepts it. And in that way, Jacob is very much like the rest of his family, also stars of the book of Genesis. They all live in a world where God simply appears. They take a walk with God. They have a talk with God. They dream about God. They see God in a night vision. They talk about it with one another. They simply live in a God-infused universe, and they do not need any abstract theology. God is present with them. As the narrative of Hebrew Bible continues and unfolds, people's sense of God's presence in the world begins to shift. And we see, almost 1,000 years past Jacob's time, since we don't know exactly when Jacob lived, I'm guesstimating. Approximately 1,000 years after Jacob's time, we read the accounts of the Israelite prophets. Most of the prophets are highly literate. They were raised as priests. They're trained in the spiritual arts. They hear God's voice, they see visions, and they try to speak of this to the general public. And they suffer greatly because people do not hear, people do not understand, people do not see. People do not recognize that God is walking with them every step of the way, sometimes judging, sometimes loving, always supporting. The sense of the universe in the Israelite culture has changed. Fast forward another 500 to 1,000 years, early rabbinic times, the years that were formative for modern Judaism, the time of Jesus till about the year 500. Of course, people had mystical experiences, but the tacit agreement was, we do not write them down, and we only speak about them when another person has given us a hint that they too have powerful dreams and visions. And even then, we only talk about them one-on-one in private. We acknowledge God's presence in the universe, but we keep it quiet. But you cannot suppress images of God, words from God, infusions of spirit from God, and they continue to bubble forth in different kinds of Jewish expression. And by the 1200s, in Mediterranean Europe, there are small circles of Jewish students and teachers and mystics, all discussing their numinous mystical dreams, talking to one another about their visions, and actively writing them down in poems, in hymns, and into the book that we now call the Zohar, the shining book, that I sometimes refer to as the big book of Jewish mysticism. Multiple volumes of dreamtime, stream of consciousness, poetic writing of the visions of many overlapping groups of people. And the Zohar contains not only beautiful lyrical descriptions of meeting God in nature and traveling back into biblical scenes and finding yourself there, and God appearing as a deer or as a bird or in the stars, contains all of that. And it also contains a theory of how it is possible that God could appear to us individually in our own psyches, in our own imagination, in our own dreams. A theory of how it could be that a presence and a being so subtle and so infinite could yet appear to us in these finite forms. And that theory, or that theology, is expressed in what we call the theory of the Sefirot. You may have heard of it. I'll translate the word before I tell you what the theory is. Sefirot, a Hebrew word, it has resonance with the Greek word for spheres, as in the spheres of heaven that encircle our world. It has resonance with the Hebrew word sapphire, sapphire, which is used by some of the prophets to describe the appearance of heaven and the floor under God's feet, and which is also, as the Hebrew Bible says, resonant with the sapphire stone into which the Ten Commandments were originally engraved. Not granite like the stones held by Charlton Heston, but shining, iridescent blue, just like the sky. The word Sefirot has resonances with the Hebrew word mispar, numbers, sipur, stories, sefer, book. So that the word Sefirot has resonance with the blue heavens, the rocky earth on which we stand, and all of the different ways that we represent that to ourselves. And the Sefirot are, very simply, spiritual qualities. And they've been enumerated in different ways, but the most famous way is a list of the following 10 spiritual qualities. emptying, wisdom, understanding, love, judgment, balance, endurance, gratitude, grounding, presence. What they are is both simple and deep. But the theory of what they do and how they manifest is very complicated. They are the essential qualities of God. They are the essential qualities of a human being's inner life. They are the energy centers within the body. They are God's original map for creation, and they existed in the heavenly realm before anything material was ever brought forth. They are the ideas that give shape and form to everything we see around us, the building, the floor, our clothing. They give shape to our thoughts. They are the map of creation. They are so many different things, all mystically participating with one another, that it boggles the imagination. And if you thought the Trinity was a complicated concept to wrap your mind around, imagine this: 10 unifying into one, multiplicity in monotheism, and the number of theories and documents and speeches that the mystical teachers began to provide in order to help people understand this became absolutely overwhelming. And in our literature, we have about 500 years worth of increasingly esoteric elaboration on the theory of God's nature and its relationship to our own spiritual lives. Until, in the late 1700s, a charismatic teacher decided enough is enough. God is not just for the theologians, not just for the philosophers, but we need to bring God back into the hearts of the people. This teacher was the Baal Shem Tov, or Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov. His name literally means master of the good name, or master of the holy name. In Jewish tradition, if you become a famous teacher, you get a nickname, and nobody remembers your real name. You're known by your nickname. I'm not making this up. It's really the way it works. The Baal Shem Tov became the founder of what is now known as the Hasidic movement. Not Hasidic in its ordinary meaning of ultra-Orthodox, but Hasidic in its meaning of bringing mysticism home to the people. And the Baal Shem Tov taught a great variety of techniques for people coming to realize that the Sfirot, the subtle qualities of God, were present with them every single moment of every single day. And the techniques ranged from meditation to chanting to movement to ecstatic prayer, something for everyone. And I will teach you right now one of those practices. It's not ecstatic dance. You do not have to get up in front of the group, right? No wonder people talked about these things privately if it included ecstatic dance. But it's something that you can start practicing in your heart and mind today. And the Baal Shem Tov called it the practice of divine providence, bringing home to you the experience that God is truly with you, watching you, and living inside you every single moment. So imagine it is 10:30 on a Sunday, and you have just arrived at church and you have told yourself, today is the day that I am going to focus during the entire service. I'm not going to miss a word of the sermon. I'm going to sing along with the hymns. During the prayers of the people, I'm going to follow the directions. I'm going to really, really feel and send my vibrations out there. Today is the day. And then your mind wanders to your grocery list. You're worried about your sister. Even though you're completely exhausted and you need a nap, you're going to go visit your father today. Your mind is filled with these ordinary thoughts. And all of a sudden, it's almost 11 o'clock and you worry that you have failed in your spirituality today. The Baal Shem Tov would say, actually, you have not failed at all. All you need is a little shift in your awareness. All you need to do is understand that all of these stray thoughts are actually manifestations within you of the Sefirot, of God's essential spiritual qualities. You're worried about the grocery list? Why, that's a manifestation of God's quality of judgment inside you. You need a structured life. You need a life where the pieces fit together in an ordered way, just like they do in God's universe. Worrying about your sister? That is God's love manifesting in your psyche and flowing through your particular channel to somebody else. You're falling down on your feet. You desperately need a nap. You volunteered at the church. You have so much to do. And yet you're still going to make time to see your Father today. That's the divine quality of endurance, showing up in your thoughts and infusing you with the energy to go forward. Why? It turns out there has not been a single second the entire morning where you have been alienated from God. The divine spirit has manifested in you every single second. For how could it be any other way? Each and every one of us actually lives as Jacob does, as this channel with the messages coming down to us and the messages being sent back out through us. And the Baal Shem Tov says, all it takes is a slight shift of awareness before we can move through every moment of everyday life, saying to ourselves, wow, God is in this place. And maybe a moment ago, I did not know it, but now I do.